there are any number of ways to tell a story, and that story will change from one day to the next, 1 hour to the next. You choose a method long before the telling, or in the moment you open your mouth, the telling chooses you. No one version is true or false. When I remember this, I remember laughing at a dumb joke Will told as we drove, or I was laughing with my shoes in my hand on a dark road.
Mm.
I couldn't get through it the first time,
Mhm.
as I told you. I needed a second run at it. Um, I needed to be in a different headspace to read Body of Trust. And I realized that when did my first sort of partial pass, and I thought I need to come back to this later. So I did, and once I went through it, after a conversation with you and talking about thinking of having the drawings in my mind while I was going through and reading the book, helped me enter into that world in a different way. Uh, there's such a depth to these characters, and because, like you said, it's character driven and it wasn't plot driven, I I I I needed to have a clearness and a commitment to the reading. It wasn't easy reading for me. I needed often to read things twice, and sometimes because I needed to connect with it in a certain visual way, or I needed to, it was so yummy. Like some of the sentences were so delicious that I had to go back and I want to taste that again. I want to feel that sense again. I want to read that sentence again. So I, that was it's like having a very satisfying meal. And then I could connect, um, how I was feeling at the time I was doing those drawings when I moved back from North Carolina, excuse me, when I moved back from Chicago and I was in a certain headspace. It's like I had to go back to that place I was and read the book from that headspace, which was lonely and broken and isolated, which is the headspace I drew those drawings
Mm.
in White Ridge from. So um, once I could keep those in my mind's eye, those drawings of those trees and those dead crows and those bird wings and those things in my mind's eye, then I could go into the rest of the book, read the rest of the book physically.
Mm.
We read it. I would read it. We'd talk about it. I tell you what was moving, the things that were really like like I said, delicious to read,
Mm.
and then stuff that was just like, wait a minute, I'm not buying
Mhm.
I'm not buying this based on what I know about this character and how I'm perceiving this character. So yeah, it started that way as a collab. It was like, oh, I saw your work and it made me think of this. And that's where it sort of started. And then we started to get into the meat of it
Yeah.
and play back and forth off of each other because we have a trust between each other's skill
Mhm.
that and vision. So you proposed a connection between those drawings and the text came from you, and then I came into that process and started to knit those together,
Right.
um,
And
more.
the text itself changed also in the process of these conversations.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
that's exciting. It's like happening in real time.
no, yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
yeah, it's um because the book is so um ethereal and feeling based, um, that takes a different approach, I think, to read it. You need to sort of abandon almost a physical world, even though it takes place in a real physicality in terms of
Mm,
the weight and the disease and the apocalypse per se. But you have to think very metaphorically and symbolically also when I was trying to draw things that connected to that, to those imagined places in the characters' minds of where they would go or
mm,
how they were lost. I betrayed my past. I surrendered fragments of a future. I could see myself doing it. I turned each one between my fingers, then let them go. I gave up a certain vision of myself. I gave it all over to a crystalline loneliness.
not bad.
Good. On those nights, we reinvented each other simply by talking far into ourselves. It was a tacit agreement, never spoken. We touched only occasionally, accidentally. We shaped our world. On those nights, I visited places I couldn't easily return from. On those nights, Antonia released me into doubt, and I freed her somehow from Monmouth. Yeah, I mean, other than sort of the general senses of loss that you read in the book, and that, I mean, as knowing myself as a person who's been through a lot of things, and that sense of making sure that when you look behind over your shoulder, there's always that little bit of hope for something.
Mhm,
You're not sure what it is, but that faith in that there needs to be, like, it's the quality of the artist, I think, is it's full of self-doubt, it's full of competition, it's full of rejection. And then you keep looking over your shoulder to look for that little piece of 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 why you keep doing it,
mhm,
why you keep reading, why you keep going, why you keep making, why you keep drawing. And you don't always understand that on a conscious level.
mhm,
And that's what I liked about the characters was their fearlessness to think about, like to say, I don't know what the fuck's going on.
mhm,
I don't know why I'm feeling this way. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And that's a very human quality that I think I could relate to. And of course, I mean, ironically, you wrote it pre-COVID about this thing that lowers itself onto the world that starts to indiscriminately pick off
mhm,
um, the human race, um, and the lack of control of that, feeling control like you have no control over that, and how that plays out in all the characters, um, felt very relatable for me. Having We worked quietly for a time, rocking gently, calm as grandfather's loitering outside a general store. The rhythm of our stones against the metal, a substitute for conversation. His phrases long and elegant, mine terse and irregular. The light fades at the edge of the horizon, a huge golden sun burning to red and lodging itself in the pines west of the corridor. Not difficult, but a challenge to have words there that had pictures and meanings ingrained in them, and then introduce literal pictures and how to merge those things. And I'm really looking at these two mediums and how to make a third thing
Right.
with them. So that does not look like picture words, picture words, picture words. Um,
Or
and it's
words describing what happened on the pier, a picture
right
of the
of
pier.
a peer,
And yeah,
right.
yeah,
We're asking the reader to go to other places in this book, ones that you have written in the character places that you've written about that the characters go through, and also places that I ask viewers to go through when they look at my drawings.
mhm,
And and I think the open door is what we're trying to make here. Where people go or what they think of when they're, because it's not a descriptive back and forth that way, that's asking the viewer to be interactive in a different kind of way.
right,
I'm hoping,
right,
right?
right. We talked before about how the text is the text itself is open, so that it sort of asks or maybe even demands that the reader bring something to it. And what any given reader gets from the text or from the drawings or from the entire object itself is is up to them. I mean, it's not us. We're
Yeah.
not trying to press some
And we
particular.
have that in common in our practices. I think from having read your previous, a lot of your previous work, I mean, we've known each other for 13 years, right? At least.
Yeah,
So, I think it might even be 15 years. So, and I've read lots of your work, which is why I was open to the collaboration to begin with, because of the way that I already knew that you wrote.
yeah,
And I approach my practice that way, where I really, I'm not interested. I'm interested in asking questions, which I think the book does a lot. I'm not interested in really providing many answers
yeah.
because I don't have many.
Who the hell are we to have answers?
I know.
Right. Don't
So
look at me. I don't
I
know
know.
what more than you do. Yeah. Well, and
Um,
there's a level of trust to it too, because you're trusting the reader or you're trusting the person who's looking at the work. You're trusting them to complete it in a certain kind of way, I think,
for themselves.
for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
a very intimate relationship to complete that experience for the reader, for themselves, which is going to be completely different for another reader based on the experience they bring to the
right.
table.
And completely different from what we might imagine
Yeah,
ourselves.
which is super exciting.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's the really cool part of it, I think. The text of this book would be fine as just a book sitting there
Yeah.
printed as a book.
And my
Yeah,
drawings
yeah,
were like at Seekan, when I've shown them, people have had amazing
yeah,
responses to them for
yeah.
sure.
But what we're doing now is creating this, like we've said, we're creating this third thing or fourth thing or fifth thing or however, wherever it is, um, that brings these things together in unpredictable ways, I think. And part of the fun and part of the I don't know, gratification in that is the unpredictability of it. And like we said, the unpredictability of,
And don't you get off on that fear? I
oh yeah,
sort of, I, it's sort of exciting going, yes, it's one thing to say, yes, it's unpredictable, and another to say, yeah, but how?
well, and
You know,
also just, I mean, I don't think you'll be offended by this, but you know,
oh dear.
to to come home after working on a project with one or two other people like we're doing here and think to myself, this is never going to work. This is just never gonna work, which is
Did you
that,
think that did you
of
have that
course, and
feeling?
I think that all the time I think that in every,
Really? When did you think that?
no, 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 I think that in every writing project of mine, this is never going to work. I'm never going to be able to
Oh,
pull this off. And with this, it's not doesn't have anything to do with anybody's abilities or anything. It's just that there is that point in the unpredictability where I always think, always in every project, man, this is going to turn out to be a total shit show. It just,
Well, exactly. And I think that's
yeah,
what artists do. And I do the same thing where
oh
I,
yeah,
to a certain extent, and I go, it's not so much can I do this because drawing, the way and the process that I use for drawing, and I draw from images that I, that I take
yeah,
and then depart from the drawing at a certain point into another relationship with the drawing where I start to abandon the image and it's not important. It's made it's fulfilled its purpose and
right,
now I'm going into something else. Um, but it's that double-sided coin all the time
yeah,
that I think artists need, which
absolutely.
is that sense of doubt and humility, but also the ego to go, yeah, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, I think, much earlier in this conversation, you were talking about hope, that little bit of hope that keeps you going, that is probably irrational. It doesn't make any sense that you can never like articulate necessarily or describe to someone else or make real to someone else because it's like this totally unarticulated hope lying back there that I don't know, maybe this could be cool. And then all the other stuff comes in about no, it's going to be terrible. It's just not ever going to work.
Well, it's so
You
funny.
hold on to that hope or that faith that you had at the starting point, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, no, something told me this was the right place to go, and that's where I'm going to go. And I may
And
throw this or that
and
out.
that's instinct, right? And an instinct is
Yeah,
something you develop and grow and trust and faith. And you that I mean, I had instinct when I was a younger artist for sure. I've been doing it as long as you have,
sure.
and that I couldn't articulate.
Yeah,
But I always sort of had an instinct, and it's been honed, and I've been honing it and honing
yeah,
it. And even though I can't explain, well, why do you want to do this? Um, that often comes much, much later. And
yeah,
often it's informed by other people that go, wow, do you know that da 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 da? And I made this connection, da da da. And I went, oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting because then you think, oh, I was on the right track. And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
very comforting.
yeah.
And I think it gets better and better as you mature as an artist. The girl in the pictures, me, a different me, a part of me, smiles from some frames, sheds tears in a few, or studies me with quiet intensity. The photo albums so substantial now, they might as well rest upon my lap here in the car. She elaborates what she knows with simplicity, without judgment. Each photograph another chapter in her history. She's 8 years old, nestled into her favorite rocking chair at a spot on the porch from which she can observe the entire backyard. She peers out through straight black bangs, her chin nuzzling a teddy bear, the color of saffron. The picture is slightly out of focus, so she must be rocking steadily.
Mm,
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that say a million things?
yeah.
So, so great. So great. Together, we protect something small, a seed, a tone, or sound, like the initiating note of a symphony.